Hello and welcome to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, June 6, 2017. As always, we are coming live from the W4CY studios here in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I hope everything is going well for you guys. You know, it's the start of June already. Can you believe that 2017 is halfway over, or almost halfway over? At the end of this month, we're already halfway through the year, and I remember a long time ago, people would say, the older you get, the faster time goes, and I can't believe that we're already into June, already into the summer. Summer is my absolutely favorite time of year. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you guys like this, the fall, the spring, whatever, but I grew up from up north, so I always enjoyed the summer, which is probably why I moved down to Florida, because it's like summer all year round, except for this week. It is in true Florida fashion right now. It has been raining for almost a week straight, and it's going to continue to downpour for about the next week or so. And, that's just the way it goes. You have a lot of nice weather, you have the beaches and everything, but, hey, we get the hurricanes and the rainfalls. But what about you guys? What are you guys going to do this summer? Do you guys have any plans now that school's out, the kids are out of school? Are you guys going to go camping? Do you guys go on family trips? What do you guys do? Let me know what you guys do. I always love to hear what you guys are doing. But in about a couple weeks, I'm headed to Chicago. I'm going to be gone for almost the whole month, and I'm going there to see family and friends, and I'm going to also go to the Chicago Open Air concert, and I'm really looking forward to that because that's going to be really cool to go to. But I decided that as of a couple years ago that I'm going to start spending the summer, at least a month, visit my family, because when you go there, you just don't seem to when you go there for like a weekend or maybe even a week, it goes by so fast, and you don't really seem like you get to see everybody and do everything. But I'd like to hear what you guys are doing this summer, because I'm always interested. I'm a little nosy like that. But tell me what you guys are going on. If you want to give us a call, you can give us a call at 561-623-9429. You can web chat us on w4cy.com and download the W4CY radio app on the App Store. And the YouTube channel will be up, but we are not doing it live. We are doing the archives only, and until we figure things out. But that's youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. So let's get into tonight's show, because I got a lot of information, and I'm hoping I can get as much as I can into, the hour that we have. But tonight's show is all about the heart. And the title is actually "The Heart Will Light the Way." For many of us, we're deep thinkers. A lot of spiritual people, a lot of people. Actually, my protege Caleb asked me to do this show a couple weeks ago. He was like, Miss Raina, after all the years that we've worked together and everything, he's like, I noticed that, I still have that trouble. You're always telling me to go, stop thinking with the brain and go to the heart. And I get so caught up in that. I don't know what to do. I just overthink, and then everything becomes chaotic because I have so many thoughts. I just don't know how to slow down. And for many of us, we do that, don't we? We think so deeply that our decisions are often overrid or they override our feelings and by logic or maybe judgment or due to fears or anything. And we get caught up in our problems. We as a society, we always do that. We always seem to be caught up in ourselves. And our society tells us that we got to concern ourselves with all these different ideas. And sometimes we get so chaotic that how can we not think? How can we not be a society of thinking when everyone tells you from birth, you got to think of this, you got to do this, you got to make the right calls, you got to make the right judgments, you got to go to school, you got to, and so we're programming ourselves to think. And for a lot of us, we become so obsessive overthinking, and when we really trick ourselves into thinking that, the more we think about a problem, the more we're going to find an answer. But and our brain is tricky because our brain likes to rationalize. Whenever we are confused, whenever we're lost, whenever we seem to have some confusion, especially emotional upset, as I like to call it, our brain tries to rationalize it, and it even tries to recreate those situations. It tries to recreate a situation that may be uncomfortable for us, or maybe that didn't pan out for us. But obsessive thinking is really a loss of control, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But you always hear about the monkey mind. If you study any form of spiritual ideas, we talk about the monkey mind a lot, and the monkey mind is very active. It confuses you. It makes you struggle. It helps you. It confuses you so much that it actually understanding becomes chaotic. It doesn't. It seems so far to get away from that idea to understand the problem that is, or the challenge that is. And so it confuses and struggles us. And logic doesn't work with the monkey mind, because the monkey mind is all about control. It's trying to analyze everything at once. It's trying to find the different scenarios and recreate this idea and transfer it to this, and make it so that the ego and the victim, kind of subside with each other. And so a lot of forms, and if you're a logical person and you're going into spirituality, I know, because I've had many students myself that come in and they're very logical, and the trick is to get them away from the brain and actually get them into the heart, because when we think logically, I don't know about you, I was talking to Dean, the owner here, and I was like, oh, I didn't sleep last night, because even sometimes when we have things that are going on, stress, everything, work, and our mind races, and that monkey mind takes over, and if we don't have control over it, we can spend days of not sleeping, and our energy and our body will create all this cortisol and all this adrenaline to keep us going and everything like that, to be able to make sure that it keeps up with the mind that goes. But our heart is really something that we need to start focusing on, because our heart really, when there's an emotional upset comes in, we tend to have an idea of self-loathing. Spiritual people have a very big problem for a long time with self-loathing, and then what ends up happening is they go kind of from the victim into that anger and judgment with each other, or with themselves, I should say, or maybe even with other people. But and this becomes everyday life. And what kind of life are we living if our mind is chaotic? If we're sitting there and we're confused and we're struggling and we're always in emotional upset, and how we react to things is through anger and judgment. Life becomes a chore, right? We're meant to live life and experience life, and yes, there's going to be joys and there's going to be sorrows and everything, but I think what we do is we focus too much on the ideas of happiness versus sorrows, or sad versus happy, or joy, or right versus wrong. And we talked about my 5 no-nos a couple weeks ago, but those type of ideas play well in the monkey mind, because when we're trying to get that answer, when we're trying to rationalize, we're trying to make sure that we logically think that. And if anyone who's been in spirituality for a long time, then we know that a lot of times logic doesn't make sense when it comes to the matters of the heart. But how many of you live your lives like this? How many of you, have such scattered thoughts that you're constantly in emotional chaos? How many of you have override your thoughts, or override your feelings with your thoughts, and chaos ensues? If you're trying to develop a deeper connection to the heart, instead of listening to a lot of your chaotic thoughts, then this show you're really going to enjoy. You came to the right place, because we're going to talk all about the heart today. But the first thing that I want to get into, and I'm going to get into a little Eastern medicine as well, a little Chinese thought, because if you kind of understand as far as the theory and everything like that, it makes sense when you kind of look at things. So but why is the heart so important to us? What makes the heart special? Well, the first thing we're going to look at is the heart houses the mind, and the Chinese call it the Shen. And the Shen is described as all mental activity, consciousness, the center of all mental and physical activity. And so when we analyze that, basically what we're looking at is we're saying that it's the source of all thoughts and processes. It's the source of all mental focus, where the ideas come from, where intelligence, where planning come from. And then the Shen ends up carrying out the manifestations. So if we slow down a little bit and we say, well, we take a look at the heart and we take a look at our decisions, because many of us have made decisions, or we try to listen to our heart, and a lot of times we override it due to, like I said, due to fear. But when we're trying to connect to the heart, this is why logic doesn't make sense, because the brain tries to figure out in an analytical way of ideas of 2 plus 2 equals 4. So this makes sense to the brain. But the heart actually sees the gray area. And when the gray area comes into town, the mind a lot of times can't understand it. And if it does, that's really where, you kind of start moving down. And so when my protege and many of my students have come to me, and they're very logical and they're always in their head, they're always telling me, well, Miss Raina, how do you come up with these answers? How do you think of this? How do you see the things that you do? And I say, well, the first thing I do is I take my mind away from it. I slow down enough to be able to shut down my mind. And sure, meditation helps with that. Any form of yoga, anything that slows the mind down. But really, what I do is I start to shift my awareness, start to shift my consciousness, because I know that the brain is nothing more than an idea of consciousness. And so what that does is I always use the example of it's like a camera. And so we're videotaping the show right now on one of my cameras out here, and all it's doing is taking a picture of me, and it's taking pictures over and over and over. And that's kind of what the mind does. The mind, through the sensories of the eyes and everything like that, it takes pictures and it remembers, and it puts things in like little energetic slots, as I like to call them. And so when it needs to be recalled, it takes out that picture, and if there's an emotional attachment to it, it tells the brain to produce certain chemicals, so you feel that rush of sadness or joy or pain or whatever. And this is what the brain does. But when we shift to the heart is, like I said, it's the source of all mental. It's the true source of the mental activity, of the consciousness, where all mental and physical activity goes. So that's the true source of intelligence. When we carry this out, when we look at this, when we're in emotional distress, we can't use the heart, because the heart is too busy being weighed. It's too busy trying to process the information of either being, and the brain's in there trying to process it as well, saying, well, I was victimized here. I need to be the survivor here. This isn't right. This is wrong. This is good. This is bad. And we're trying to categorize everything. And so the heart doesn't do that. The heart says, well, let me take a step back and think about this, because it needs to process the thought. It needs to process the experience, and it needs to plan what it wants to do. And this is why so many crystal children and indigos and rainbow children and all these sensitive people, psychics and all these, have a hard time with emotional upset. As a massage therapist, I even, one of the first things that when I went to massage school over, I think 11 years ago, it was one of those things where they would always sit there and say, oh, you got to be careful of exchanging energy. You got to be careful of talking to the people and transferring their issues into yours. And because a lot of massage therapists take on that, because they're healers, they're in that energetic field and they're moving that energy around. And because we have unresolved emotions of our own, we don't, and during that moment of consciousness, of allowing our mind to shut down, because even in a massage, you're both parties, the person who's laying on the table, their consciousness shuts down, or their thinking part of their brain, and their heart opens up because they're just in the moment. And same with the therapist. And that's what ends up happening a lot of times, and that's why a lot of energy exchanges take place. So when and what ends up happening to a lot of therapists is they go home and the person feels great, and then they just feel heavy in the heart. How many of you guys on a daily basis have heartache? How many times do you just feel like life is just weighing you down? There's always something that's just dragging with you. And when we feel that, when we feel, I'll say it over and over, I have anxiety and different things like that, but you have to be able to learn to where it's coming from, because the heart plays a tricky part in this, and the heart wants to thrive. The heart energy is very powerful. Remember, it's the ideas of life. It's the idea of who you are in essence and truth, and it's true intelligence. It has nothing to do with your IQ. Your IQ is one form, but your heart intelligence is completely different. So when the Shen, or the mind, the heart housing the mind, it carries out its manifestations, what it always ends up doing is it always comes out in 7 emotions. And the 7 emotions of the heart are anger, worry, fear, joy, grief, sadness, and apprehension. So if you take a look at that, that's kind of a wide range. That covers everything. Most people will say, if you ask them how they are, well, are you angry? Are you happy? Are you sad? Your fear, your joy, your grief? Do you have apprehension to do something? What is going on inside the mind? What is going on? And when I say the mind, I mean the heart. What's going on inside that? And what ends up happening is, a lot of us, because we don't know how to truly process it, because our mind actually shuts down the heart from carrying out its process through logic, it comes out in signs of laughing. Maybe people have, those people that sigh all the time. People that sigh all the time have emotional discord with their heart. They have a disconnection between their mind and the heart, because their mind is trying to rationalize something that it can't understand, and the heart's saying, hey, let go of control. And so that type of sign, is, in Chinese medicine, they'll call it rebellious lung qi, but it has to do with that, but it also has to do with the energy trying to process. It has to do with how the energy is trying to come out, how it's trying to plan itself to understand what's going on. But it also comes out in sobbing. I know many spiritual people, even people who've come to me and who I've taught over the years, start crying right away, especially when I used to do just healings, and that people just all of a sudden, before you even get them on the table, or you just sit with them, and sometimes they just start instantly sobbing. And that's because that's that release. Imagine trying to, if you want to think about the heart and its energy. I mean, I know a lot of spiritualists talk about chakras and everything. I don't really talk about that stuff, but if you imagine energy and this power source of it just spinning around and just trying to move, because in life everything needs to move. Life is perfect. The universe is perfect. The only thing that's not perfect is our perception in life, and that's what causes all this chaos. But our body is meant to move. And what happens for you health nuts out there, and we will do health shows from time to time here too on the show, but even for you health, like in order to be healthy, what do they say? You need to eat healthy foods like dark green vegetables or vegetables and fruits and stuff. You need to take care of yourself. You need to exercise. And why is exercising or yoga or anything like that so important? Because it allows movement. And so a lot of people that can't connect to the heart end up having a lot of heart problems, because they don't allow that energy to move. Imagine trying to contain for many years energy that needs to move, and you're spending all your time trying to push it down, trying to control it, because you don't want to appear weak to somebody, or you don't want to maybe you're depressed a lot and you're just tired of it. You're tired of crying, you're tired of being angry, you're tired of worrying, and you're just trying to contain it all the time. And so these signs, these emotions, everything is telling you that things need to be released, because it's the reflection of the Shen, it's the reflection of the mind and the heart, the true mind, that's trying to let you know what's going on. You can't run from it. The Shen's function is to process all incoming sensories and intuition. If you look at that, if you look at anything that comes in through the body, of course, everything processes through the brain in some way, shape, or form, but it is distributed through the heart. That's where we feel. How many times we see something, and when we see something, your brain doesn't ache. When you see something that's, say, like you watch like some horrible video of like someone getting hurt or beat up or even someone getting killed in a car crash, your brain doesn't ache with pain. It doesn't say, oh my God, you don't say, oh, my brain aches. You say, my heart aches, right? Because where is that process? Where is that information going from? It's going from the brain and into the heart, because the heart needs to say, hey, how do I feel about this? What is my true feeling? Does it go along with my truth? Does it go along with my, what do I have an issue with this? And when we go through the heart, what ends up happening is our reaction. That's why I said after we process things, it'll create a reaction. Depending how you perceive things is how you're going to react to it. We'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
Okay, welcome back. You're listening to Transcendental Transformation Radio Show with Miss Raina. If you'd like to give us a call, give me a call at 561-623-9429 or visit the web chat at w4cy.com. So when we're talking about the heart, we're talking about the mind and the heart housing the mind, the true mind, not the brain. The brain is something that's a different, complete organ. And so when we process things, as we were saying, as we process things is how we perceive things and how we're going to react to things. If your heart and your mind is full of pain, if it sees pain and suffering in the world and it's full of being the victim, well, then you're going to have emotional outbursts. Are you one of those that are, how do you react to things? And if you're one of those that are very emotionally reactive, a lot of us like to think of ourselves as open-minded, and we like to think of ourselves as accepting. But how are you when someone says something that you don't agree with? Do you instantly shut it down and try to push your way? Do you get angry at them? Are you fearful that their idea is going to take away from what you think? These are signs of an emotional discord with the heart and the mind. And so these type of reactions, these type of emotional outbursts usually come out in that aggressive anger and bitterness. When we have resolved our challenges and our issues, and we have a perception and we perceive things with understanding and knowledge, then we react with compassion. And I'm going to be the first to tell you, as a child, I even had a hard time with this. My family used to tell all the time, because I was very explosive when I was young. I used to just have this energy, and when it got too much, and if I didn't exercise, and I was very hyper. I've said I have ADHD, but I was always hyper. I was always on the move, and if I had to sit still, I felt this intense energy just come within me all the time. And what would happen is, if I didn't get up and move, if I didn't exercise, if I didn't do the things I did, then it would become so tight in my chest that it would always come out as an emotional reaction to something. And a lot of times I would get in trouble for it. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but if you can, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But in our society, if we're reacting to people and things and ideas without thinking of them, it's because our brain is conditioned. We're trying to find an idea to rationalize what someone else has said. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with it. It doesn't mean that someone's right or wrong, or you're right or wrong. But but the way we instantly react to something tells us if we have resolve or not. If you're in harmony with the mind, or if you're in a discord with the mind. So the first thing I want to talk about with the heart is the four pillars. Is if you're working from the heart, these four pillars are always going to be. And the four pillars are honesty, loyalty, respect, and truth. People always ask me, how do you know when you're working from the heart rather than the mind? And that's what I always say. I always say, well, it's simple. I was like, it's the four pillars. I was like, because the heart works in honesty. The heart works in loyalty. The heart works in respect. It works in truth. It doesn't do that. The brain works in judgment. The brain works in belief. The brain tries to rationalize everything. The brain is dishonest. The brain tries to control everything. Remember, we have the victim, we have the ego, and all these different little things controlling us at the time because of our conditioning. Because however you're brought up is how your mind is conditioned, and that's what makes life so hard. And so I always look at this and that's one of the reasons why I say there's really no such thing as good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, better, worse, is because when you come from a place of honesty, and that just doesn't mean are you speaking honest. That means are you working? The things you do, are you honest with your friends? Are you honest with you? Are you honest with how you live your life? Are you loyal to yourself? Are you loyal to your word? If you're going to work, are you going to work, or are you just doing it half-ass, or what is it? Because being loyal is not just being loyal to a friend and being true to them. It's also being true to your ideas and your word and how you feel. What puts the passion in? And it's the same with respect. We talk in this country a lot of times. I hear all the time on social media, and you'll hear me bring this up a million times because social media is the perfect example of these, and how people will sit there and say, oh, well, I demand respect, but at the same time they're firing and they're angry, and this person did this to me and all that stuff. Well, do you respect yourself? Do you respect yourself enough not to get involved in those ideas? Do you respect yourself enough to show other people compassion when you need to? It's very hard. I'll admit, even sometimes it's a challenge for me once in a while. I may be moody. My hormones fluctuate up and down, and on those days it's a little bit more challenging. Hey, I'm human. I don't expect myself to be perfect, and that's another thing about respect. And same with truth. It's the same thing. In spirituality, we always have this idea that in order to achieve this balance, as we like to say, or this enlightenment, that we have to be perfect. But that's not working in honesty. That's not being loyal to yourself. That's not showing yourself respect. It's showing yourself respect is understanding who you are, what your challenges are, and where it's going to bring you. And when you have those bumps in the road, how do you handle it? Are you honest with yourself and say, you know what, instead of blaming everybody else, because the first thing that you should always do is, okay, so what perception did I see this in that caused this chaos? Even if someone came up and slapped you right in the face, what perception in my view did I come from? Where's the loyalty to me? Where's the respect? Where's the truth? And we have to end up looking at it that way, because the brain's going to tell you, well, they did that. The brain's going to tell you, well, I don't agree with that, so they're wrong. I'm not even going to bother with that because that's not what I believe, or that's their truth. And that's one of the biggest things in spirituality that I find that is one of the biggest beliefs, is when I see someone that says that they're open-minded, but then they're always pointing the finger at somebody else and they're saying, well, that's your truth, and then they override them what they believe. Well, then that's working from the mind. That's not working from the heart, because the heart, again, is honest with itself. It doesn't matter. It's not offended by somebody else. You don't get offended. That's why, people, if you come and call, if you write emails, I always respond to them. I always answer. And even if someone, writes. I don't always get the nicest emails, and even if someone does it, I still take the time, and they took the time, even if they're bashing me or they agree with me or whatever, and I work in honesty and I work in loyalty with that, and I show them respect, even if they're not showing me that, because that is working from the heart. And since our lives are dictated through thoughts and emotion, since the Shen processes the emotion and the brain processes logic, we have to become aware of where we're working from. And that's what I always tell you. Depending on your actions, depending on how you react to something, depending on what you choose to do after the situation occurs or after the challenge occurs, is depending on whether you're not working from the brain. I always tell people all the time, when something happens, don't try to even think about it. Try to tell me how you feel. And I do that with all my students. Tell me how you feel immediately. What was your reaction? And even if you said, oh, the first thing I wanted to do was put my hands around their neck and just choke them, that's okay. That's okay. Tell me what your initial reaction was, because that tells me what's going on. That tells me if the victim took control right away. That tells me if the survivor. That tells me what part of the ego has control and where you're coming from. Because a lot of times, hey, I know that you're a good person. I know that you're out there trying to do the best you can with what's given, and life is confusing. You have all these different people saying all these different things. Hey, even I'm saying different things, and you're just trying to find out what agrees with you and what's going to make your life thrive. But we have to become aware, because the brain doesn't work with awareness. If we're lying and we're rationalizing, that's always the brain. That's the ego. That's the judgment. Every time, what's the old saying go? Every time you point one finger, there's three pointing back at you, right? Because that's telling you that you're judging a situation or the person, even if you work in right and wrong, and they're the wrong. You create that rationalization. But when you work in honesty and awareness, that's always the heart. So if we pick apart the brain, because the brain stores the ego, the brain always, that's the number one rule for it, is the brain stores the ego. And I'm not going to go into ego, super ego, and id. I just like to break them down as victim and survivor, because without having any type of psychological background, you can understand what a victim is, you can understand what a survivor is. But if I start talking in super ego, id, and all this different stuff, you may get a little lost. And I want to make sure that everyone, is up to speed. But, we have to look at that. So, always remember that the moment we try to think about something, the moment we try to rationalize something, we're not going to get to that heart. We're not going to get that. Why? Because the brain selfishly wants. The ego always wants. When we're upset about something, I always sit there and say, okay, well, let's take a step back. And I always use children as the best example, because children, we understand that their brain is immature. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the growth yet. So, they haven't been they're being conditioned. So, but they're acting on pure raw emotion. And because they don't have that control yet, it comes out as those angers, those temper tantrums. But when I tell people, okay, so you're mad at this person or you're mad at this situation, and you want to already write them off and put them in jail and send them off or whatever, so you never have to deal with this person again. But I ask them, I say, okay, well, what do you think about children? I go, do you, if a child is bad, do you punish it, right? And they say, well, yeah, okay. I said, well, how do you punish it? Well, maybe a smack on the tush, maybe a 5-minute timeout or something. Maybe I take away their toys for a little while, whatever it is. And then I say, okay, well, but you don't throw the kid out your house and send him off to boot camp or anything like that. Or you don't send the kid to the electric chair or send him to juvie for 18 years until he gets over because he took maybe someone else's car, or he wrote, on the walls, or whatever the situation is. And they say no, and they laugh kind of at me. And I say, well, why are you laughing? Well, they're like, yeah, well, that's because it's a child. And I said, well, that's how the brain works too. I go, and that's how a lot of us react to things. We act as like children, because our childhood is our foundation for everything. Our child, however we grew, our experiences growing up, that's our foundation for our challenges as we're adults. And so if you don't think that little child, that little ego that has been bruised and battered and hurt throughout its time, if you don't think think that that's controlling you, if you don't think that that's trying to get control, because every time you get emotionally reactive, that's that little child. I go, so you have to treat yourself and others the same way. When someone is very emotionally reactive to me, yes, at one time when I had no control years ago, I was ready to go, toe to toe with somebody. But then I said, but it would always disagree with me. Whenever I got into arguments, whenever I got into physical fights, and if when you find out, to the new listeners, that where I grew up and how I grew up and different things like that, I fought a lot, and and it always disagreed with me, because I was told, well, you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to fight, and you have to do all these things. And it used to hurt me all the time, because the heart was trying to tell me that, hey, this is not the way. And instinctively, I already knew that, fighting wasn't the way, or yelling at someone isn't the way. And once you allow the heart to shine, once you allow that, then you realize that the brain and the ego is just selfish. It just wants it. It goes in desire, it goes in need, it goes in doubt, and it goes in fear. Anybody who lives in fear and doubt, if you have a lot of insecurities, if you are afraid to do anything, just like a child, what does a child do when they're going to school for the first time? They grab onto the parent's leg, right? And they hide behind you, right? Because they're afraid, because they're insecure. The brain is taking over. But once they realize that there's nothing to be, and the brain kind of settles down, the heart goes, man, they have a good time, to the point where a lot of times parents can't get the child to leave. And so we have to take a step back and say, okay, anytime there's desire, anytime I have a need for something, anytime I have doubt or fear, then I'm working from the part of the ego that is creating this. I'm working from either the victim or the survivor. I'm working from that side. I even had breakfast with my protege this morning, and we were talking about certain things, about dimensions and stuff, and he asked me, and I was like, to be honest with you, it's not a big deal to me. That kind of stuff doesn't matter to me. And he looked at me, he's like, why? I was like, well, because it's not. I work with what I work with, and whether someone can tap into this, or even if that exists, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is life, what's happening right now, and the people in my life, and how I treat myself, yada yada, and that's all that matters. And I saw the spark in his eye, kind of be like, oh, okay, I can understand that. Because a lot of times when we're chasing things, when we're trying to know, when we're trying to have all those tools in our tool belt, and we're trying to have all these different things, what we're really chasing is our insecurity or our fear. We're chasing that part of the ego that's been battered and bruised. And so that's when we have to take a step back, and we create those scenarios, and we create that altered perception of reality. And that creates that despair and that chaos. And we have to always ask ourselves, okay, am I working in honesty? Is what I'm feeling right now, and what am I doing? Is my desire, is it coming from honesty? And be honest with yourself. Don't think about, am I being honest? Because your brain's going to say, oh yeah, I'm being totally honest. And we know the brain will say what it needs to gain control, but the heart won't lie to you. It never does. If you have this huge need to do something, well, is it passion, or is it a need? Is it trying to fill an insecurity or a fear? Or is it something that is just a part of you? Because a lot of people and a lot of healers disagree when I say this saying, but a lot of healers are out there trying to heal the world because they're in pain, and they feel that if they heal everybody, they don't have to be in pain anymore. It's like this weird psychological idea, and it's true. If you take a step back and really talk to healers, well, why do you want to heal people? Well, I really want to change the world. I want to help people. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, because I'm always in pain, or blah blah, or you can get them to cry real easy. You can just get them to tear by waving your hand or something. And that tells me that what their desires are, as best of the intentions that they have, is coming from the need. And so those desires will create that altered perception. It'll create that reality that creates the chaos. It'll create that despair. And no matter how much you go and you try to satisfy the ego, we know that the ego is never there. And so, the ego is never satisfied. So the heart gets satisfied. The heart is happy. The heart is balanced. If you allow the heart to flow, if you allow that to happen, it does that. But if you allow your emotions to take over, and that's why I work so steadily with emotions. With anybody, the first thing that you have to resolve is that when the brain is conditioned to anything, there's always rationalization. If you're trying to change what has happened, you need to learn how to accept it. The heart will teach you how to accept it. The heart will say, you know what, yes, I don't like this. Yes, this sucks. This was very uncomfortable of an experience. But the heart will help you understand through honesty. It'll tell you, you know what, no matter what happens in life, you're loyal to yourself, you respect yourself. And the truth of the matter is, this is just a lesson. Anything we have in life is just a lesson. And that's the hardest thing, because we take things as this punishment or a reward system in life. But when you take a step back and realize that everything that came into your life is just a lesson, trying to help the spirit grow and get you back into touch with who you are, well, then there's no need to rationalize. It happened. This is what it is. This is the way it happened. I need to be honest. Yes, maybe I was overreactive. Yes, maybe I was in judgment. Maybe I had this desire. Maybe I stepped over somebody else's needs because I wanted something so bad. And when that type of stuff happens, oh my God, it's a miracle. Things in your life heal. You realize all of a sudden, the moment you start to work in honesty, the moment you start to work in the heart and you shut the brain down and you say, okay, brain, take 5, go sit in the corner for a minute. The moment you start to do that, the moment you start realizing like things don't matter, things aren't as big as you thought they were. The world's not going to end. The victim, the pain of that scenario goes away. But you have to be willing to be able to do that. If you're out there trying to cheat people, if you're out there trying to cheat yourself, if you're out there deceiving yourself and others, and that in judgment, then you're not working from the heart. And as long as you're doing that, you're not going to connect. The heart always resides, and I've said that 3 times, and I'll say it one more time just because I know the brain likes to hear things over and over, but the heart always resides in truth, honesty, loyalty, and respect, always. It understands compassion. It understands sensitivity. If you're not being sensitive to other people in life, if you're always so angry at everything, then there's a part of the heart that needs to work itself out. Maybe it's wounded a little bit because maybe someone wasn't as sensitive to you, but it's sensitive to other people's needs. It doesn't take offense, like I said. It doesn't take offense to if somebody agrees with you or not. It doesn't take offense if somebody lives their way differently than that. If you're walking down the street and someone dresses differently and right away your mind goes there, well, then we're not working from understanding. We're not working from that sensitivity, because there's no judgment, there's no lies, there's no selfish taking. It's just happy. It's happy, it's content, it's free flowing, and shortly it makes you realize. It makes you, as I said, it makes you realize the passion and the strength. One of the things that, and actually it builds self-esteem too. And one of the things that I start with a lot of people is, a lot of people say, well, Miss Raina, I really want to learn how to, build my self-esteem. I have poor self-esteem, and I just can't seem to understand, like, I've taken self-esteem classes, I've taken gratitude training, I've taken all these things, and yes, I'm appreciative of what I have, but I still am lacking. I still have insecurities. I still have these doubts. I still have these needs. And I'm like, well, yeah, because our focus and where we're focusing is not what's creating self-esteem. What starts creating that is start working with that every day. Start asking yourself is use the 4 pillars, use the honesty, loyalty, respect. Ask yourself, create the foundation of self-esteem, create that. Ask yourself, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, am I working in honesty? If I'm going to say this, is this being honest? Is this being loyal? Am I trying to overstep? Because I know for many of us, have you ever done or had an action or anything, a decision where, your heart said you're about to do something, your heart's screaming, no, there's that feeling inside of you that's like, no, don't do it. It's not beneficial to us. But your brain says, oh yeah, well, you know what, but you know what, but they won't know. It's just one little thing. They're making money anyways. They won't know. And that's the battle. And then you feel guilty. You walk away, and if you don't have guilt, then then we gotta start a little bit more. But if you have that guilty, well, then that's proof that what's going on. Your heart's trying to tell you that your brain is working from it's not being honest. I don't know how many times I go to Whole Foods, because you guys know I love Whole Foods, and it's but I go there and they miss things all the time. And you know what? Yes, especially when money's tight, because being an entrepreneur, sometimes money's great, sometimes it's not. But when money's tight, hey, you know what? And they miss something, and it's $3, $4, or even a couple cents. Parts, even once in a while, my brain will go, well, hey, look, at least, and you know what though? But I always work in honesty. I say, excuse me, you missed that. Did you get that? And I'm always looking at what they're ringing up, because I know that as long as I work in honesty, as long as I work in truth and respect and loyalty, I know that my life goes in accord. The heart will tell you that. You don't need to be controlled by these things. You don't need to have those selfish you don't need to have those selfish needs control you anymore. Learn to let go. Learn to be honest with yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to understand what you truly want. In life, we're taught all the time that we want the car, we want the kids, we want the husband or wife, we want all these different things, but that's not really what the heart wants. The heart really wants you to make judgments, to handle your challenges accordingly to what its truth is, to what its loyalty is, to work in honesty. And again, ask yourself, am I working in this? Am I going to do this? If I'm going to work, if I'm going to take this job, I need to work in loyalty. I need to be honest with myself, because it's a reflection of me. Anything you do is a reflection of you, right? So if you're not being, if you're going to a job and you're moody, and you're not liking it, or you're in a relationship that's not making you happy, or life is just stagnant in life, well, then where are you going to feel what's going on? And you can't be, well, yeah, I respect myself, because anyone that respects themselves is in a relationship that, treats them well. Anyone that respects themselves is in a job that they enjoy, that they find mutually beneficial. So these type of ideas, these type of actions, will tell you right away. And remember, anytime you go into those 7 emotions, and too much of anything, if we're trying to find too much joy, too much happiness, and that's an imbalance of the heart, we're trying to overcompensate the sadness or the grief, because everything, I truly don't really believe in the balance in the sense that we believe in it, but those type of ideas are there. And so I say, take a step back. Take a step back and look at your life. Remember a couple of shows ago when I told you to lay things out, and I said, well, do a life review. Do one every 3, 6, and 6 months in a year, and see where life is going. Well, do the same thing with your heart. Not just on the outside world. Yes, you can do your relationships and your jobs and everything else, but do a check in there. Well, on a daily basis, how do I feel? And when it comes to decisions, am I wishy-washy? Do I doubt everything? Do I say something, then I go back on it and I say, no, I'm going to do this? Am I sad all the time? Do I have chronic depression? Do I have all these different things? Because if we have these things, then we need to understand that these unresolved issues, and what is it in your life that's unresolved? And this is why the life review is so meaningful to our lives. This is why this, in conjunction with the 4 pillars and everything else, and understanding the way the heart works, this is why that is so helpful. And if you find yourself, getting in touch, if you say, okay, in this moment, I'm going to be honest. When I talk to somebody, I'm going to speak my truth. That doesn't mean you have to snowball them and you have to just, throw them down the river and let them drown. You work in honesty. Okay, well, I'm going to still speak my truth, but I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to have understanding. I'm going to be sensitive to their needs at the same time, still be able to say what I need to say. Because in a friendship, in a relationship, any form of relationships, isn't truth and honesty, loyalty and respect part of it in anything you do. And so, that right there makes the shift. So slow down the mind, be able to see the judgment, be able to take it, and remember that every choice that you have is you. Anything that you have in life is a choice. There's nobody else but you making those choices. And if you can't make those choices for yourself, if you're always relying on somebody, then start relying on yourself. So you know what, I'm going to stop calling the people for my friends for everything. I'm going to start making my choice. I'm going to face my fears. I'm going to face my insecurities. Every time my brain tries to tell me, no, this isn't the way it is, I'm going to trust myself. I'm going to, work in these ideas. I'm going to work in the 4 pillars. I'm going to believe in myself. And, right or wrong, and that because the mind has to process that, right or wrong, I'm going to do what I need to do to build that self-esteem. And remember that, the ego and fears will always cause pain and chaos, and the heart will always light the way. All right, everybody, that is tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be back. I don't know what we're going to do next week yet. I haven't thought of the show yet, but pay attention to our social media. You can follow us at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. You can visit our website at soulandspiritguide.com. Email us at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com. Visit the W4CY website. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful night.